The .NET Core podcast is supported by our listeners who have become patrons. To see a full list of the patrons, or to join them, head over to .NETCore.show/patrons. Hello everyone and welcome to the .NET Core podcast, an award-winning podcast where we reach into the core of the .NET technology stack and, with the help of the .NET community, present you with the information that you need in order to grok the many moving parts of one of the biggest cross-platform multi-application frameworks on the planet. I am your host, Jamie GaProgMan Taylor. In this episode, I wanted to get a little meta as it's time for the 2022 mid-break, and I wanted to talk about that really quickly. I also wanted to talk about some of the shows that you should check out until we're back on September 9th, 2022. Or September 7th, 2022 if you're a patron of the show. As such, this episode will be a little shorter than the usual episodes. Anyway, let's sit back, open up a terminal, type in .NET New Podcast, and let the show begin. Another year and another season of the podcast has completed. We started Season 4 of the show on September 10th, 2021, and Season 5 will start up on September 9th, 2022. But why do we take a break in the middle of the year? Well, it's summer, and truth be told, I don't think any of us should be locked indoors any more than we have to during the summer. As important as it is to keep up with technology, it's equally as important to take a break every now and then. And that's precisely what I'll be doing, and what my editor will be doing too. Thank you for all the tireless work, Mark. Did you know you can hire him to work on your show? Check the links in your podcatcher. In the time between the start of Season 4 and when I recorded this episode, which was mid-May because I like to ensure that the show has as much of a buffer as possible, the show's episodes have been downloaded 88,405 times. And that's huge, so I'd like to thank you all. That's 88,405 unique downloads. What that means is a little vague, but the show's podcast hosting service has this to say about unique downloads.
A unique download is a filtered statistic in which those requests are determined to be from the same overall download request, showing one unique download rather than the raw request count. The unique downloads algorithm accounts for two important pieces of information: IP address and user agent. If a request or group of requests, such as a progressive download, comes from a single IP address using the same user agent inside of a rolling 24-hour window, it is considered as a single unique download rather than counting as multiple downloads.
And those download statistics would not be as high without you all listening to the show. So, thank you. By the way, if you're interested in the latest snapshot of the stats for the show, you can check them out over at the press kit, which will be linked in your podcatcher. This isn't an automated snapshot yet, but I keep it updated on a weekly basis. I have got a task on my backlog to automate this, so watch this space, I guess. Season 5. In case you're worried, there will be a Season 5 of the show. I'm currently in the process of getting the first few episodes edited and ready for you to download as I write and record this. So far, we have episodes on the following topics planned. Please note that this is entirely provisional and subject to change. Azure Cognitive Services Form Recognizer, Application Security, .NET MAUI, Unstructured Data, NDepend, and Docker. There are a few other things that I've got planned, but I'm keeping them to myself for the time being. So make sure to follow the show on your app of choice. Head over to .NETCore.show/follow for ways to do that. And watch for new episodes dropping very, very soon. If you're enjoying this show, would you mind sharing it with a friend or colleague? Check out Podcatcher for a link to the show notes, which has an embedded player within it and a transcription and all that stuff, and share that link with them. I'd really appreciate it if you could indeed share the show. But if you'd like a few other ways to support it, you could leave a rating or review on your podcatcher of choice. So if you head over to .NETCore.show/review, you'll find loads of ways to do that. you could consider buying the show a coffee. The Buy Me a Coffee link is available on each show's show notes page on the website. This is a one-off financial support option. You could become a patron. This is a monthly subscription-based financial support option, and the link to that is included on each episode show notes page as well. I'd love it if you could share the show with a friend or colleague, or leave a rating or review. The other options are completely up to you and are not required at all to continue enjoying the show. Anyway, let's get back to it. Contacting the show. This leads me to a related point, getting in touch with the show. As you might remember from the 100th episode, it's possible to get in touch via either our contact page, reaching out over Twitter at .netcore.show where DMs are open, by getting in touch with me directly on Twitter at podcasterj where, again, DMs are open, or reaching out via Patreon. You'll need to be a patron in order to reach out via Patreon. Rest assured that I do read every message sent into the show and try my hardest to get back to everyone as soon as I can. So please do reach out. If you'd like to be on the show or submit ideas for episodes, then the contact page, which will be linked in your podcatcher right now, is the best way to do this, so definitely check it out. But please also remember that I'm not a Microsoft employee, so I can't answer any messages which are directed at them. However, I will try to help you to find the right person to direct your message to. Podcasts that you might like. So because we'll be taking a 4-week break, I'd like to let you know about a few related podcasts that you might like. Tabs and Spaces and Waffling Tailors. Let's get this part out of the way first. There are 2 other shows that I'm part of that I'm sure you'll enjoy, and you should check out both of them. Tabs and Spaces is a software development pub-style chat podcast with featuring artists, or guests, and a weird numbering system, because the hosts are developers first and podcasters second. Zach Brady, Jim's The Cynical Developer Stardart, and I host the show. Each episode consists of the hosts and a guest attempting to discuss a software engineering topic. Because of this, it's a 4-way conversation, and it's also the show where
whoever is shouting the loudest is the rightest.
Because it's an informal pub-style chat, we try to play fast and loose with the rules and strike a balance between being entertaining and informative. Informatainment, perhaps? The Waffling Tailors is a show about something that I love, video games, and I co-host it with my brother. My brother and I sit with friends, developers, and experts in the industry to talk about video games, their culture, and many of the video game-related products out there, from video game films and book tie-ins to interviews with legends in the video game development industry. We recently started a series of very special episodes called The Cupboard of Shame, which my co-host describes as
the name Cupboard of Shame is a namesake only. I'm not in any way, shape or form saying games are shameful. There are exceptions, obviously, of course. But it's more a case of I talk to people who bring a game to put in the Cupboard of Shame that isn't in their normal wheelhouse of playing games. Prime example, if you have a friend that plays first-person shooters, Call of Duty, Battlefield, and you went round to the house and they were playing Hello Kitty Roller Rink. Some other people might be harsh questions. I'd rather sit down and go, so why'd you play this? Is it a bit of a guilty pleasure? What caught your attention for it? Whereas other people might go, what the are you playing that for? So I take a bit more of the high ground before I ask, what the hell are you playing that for?
Coding blocks. If you're a developer but don't listen to coding blocks, then you're really doing yourself a disservice. Coding Blocks and the Slack group that they have for the listeners is an amazingly supportive group of people, and this show would not exist without it, as I alluded to in our 100th episode. Go back and check that out if you haven't heard why. It is one of the best technology agnostic talk show podcasts that I've ever heard. The hosts, Michael, Alan, and Joe, discuss everything from Git to Kubernetes, and from the many different IDEs to the annual developer surveys. They bring a wonderful humour to their discussion and often cover the best resources in our industry. They also have several multi-part episode series where they work their way through some of the most important programming, DevOps, and SRE and tech books around. The advent of computing. If you're interested in the history of computers, the electronics which led to them, and programming, then I would recommend listening to Sean Hass's Advent of Computing. Sean presents exceptionally well-researched audio essays about individuals, certain famous and not-so-famous computers, programming languages, and more than a few important applications from the 1940s all the way up to the modern era. It really lights up a part of my brain which lay dormant for the longest time. Sean was also a guest on Tabs and Spaces recently, so definitely check that episode out. Complete Developer Podcast. Similar to Coding Blocks and Tabs and Spaces, the Complete Developer Podcast is a discussion on many different topics that software engineers should know. Beach, one of the show hosts, explains the show as
the podcast by coders for coders about all aspects of creating your best life as a developer.
Both Beach and Will share their collective experience and cover topics ranging from the deeply technical, i.e. SQL database management, to the incredibly personal, i.e. the different types of people you'll work with throughout your career. So definitely check their show out. Podcasters Live. If you're at all interested in learning about the behind-the-scenes stuff that podcasters do, or are interested in starting your own, then you really should listen to Steve Worthy's Podcasters Live show. This show is part live video stream and part audio podcast. At the time of writing this episode, Steve has already interviewed some of the big names in podcasting and has a long list of other big names that he's reaching out to as well. Also, I was on one of the earliest live streams that Steve did as part of Podcasters Live too. Wrapping up. We'll be back on September 9th, 2022 with an interview with Nick Proud about how he used Azure Cognitive Services Form Recognizer in a real-world business application. But in the meantime, make sure you check out the following podcasts: Tabs and Spaces, Coding Blocks, Waffling Tailors, Advent of Computing, Complete Developer Podcast, and Podcasters Live. Also take a look at our contact page if you're interested in feeding back to the show, asking a question, requesting a topic, suggesting a guest, or even asking to be a guest. The show notes, as always, can be found at .netcore.show, and every URL listed in this episode will be linked there, and there will be a link directly to all of that in your podcatcher. And don't forget to spread the word. Leave a rating or review on your podcatcher of choice, and head over to .netcore.show/review for ways to do that, or to reach out via our contact page. And to come back next time for more .NET goodness. I'll see you again real soon. See you later, folks. The .NET Core podcast is a production of RJJ Software.